Seems like it was just a year ago that we were in a sorghum field talking about sugarcane aphids. And Tom, should producers be concerned about them again this year?
Yes, we don't have any evidence that they're not going to show up this year. In fact, they have showed up actually last week in treatable numbers below I-40 in some fields. So the producers need to be out looking at their fields. I'm hopeful this year that we're going to see maybe less of a problem than we did last year, because I know a lot of producers have switched over to some varieties that have shown some tolerance to sugarcane aphid, and so that may actually slow them down a bit. Maybe the natural enemies can keep up with them a little better, because last year they didn't have a chance against them. They just reproduced so quickly. The key for producers is to be out there looking now in a field like this.
What is the threshold for aphids in a field like this?
Well, the thresholds are still fluctuation. I've just decided to choose one this year, and it's 20 to 30% of plants with a established colony. That means that plant's infested, and we're just going with that until our research shows that we have something better, and that maybe we have a better scouting procedure too. We've got a graduate student that's working on that, and we have other people on the what we call the sugarcane aphid team here in Oklahoma that are working on thresholds and evaluating products and looking at hybrids and things. So in a year or two we'll probably be able to lock down more, but right now I'm just going with, I've just picked one of them that's kind of floating around 20 to 30% of plants with an established colony.
Why did the sugarcane aphid really catch producers off guard last year?
Well, for one thing, it just came up through Oklahoma really quickly, and it came up into northern Oklahoma last year and surprised a lot of producers up there because they didn't see it much before. So last year it came in early. They were getting overwhelming numbers. They weren't getting the best control because it was getting ahead of them a little bit, and it hurt some of the production that we saw.
I remember last year whenever we were talking about this, you were talking about different chemical treatments to it, but
Yes.
then you also said there are wasps that will take care of the aphids. Talk about that.
Okay, we are starting to see, it's a tiny parasitic wasp. It's not the same one that we see with green bugs in wheat and sorghum.
Right.
It instead makes a little black mummy instead of the brown ones. But we actually started seeing some of them a little earlier this year than we did last year in some fields that we were finding infestations. So that's one of the reasons we're kind of hoping that these resistant varieties can kind of meld in with the natural enemies, and maybe they can work more effectively together.
If producers don't have the wasps on their property, what are some of the treatment options?
We basically have two treatments. Savanto insecticide is registered. It was registered at a lower rate this year at 4 to 7 ounces. And Transform, we did receive another Section 18 emergency exception for Transform at 0.75 to 1.5 ounces per acre. So those are really the only two options. I would even, if you have to make maybe 2 applications, I would maybe suggest switching from one to the other, so that we're getting just a slightly different activity. One of the keys that we saw last year was that we had a cool spell that came in late July, early August, and we found out that the sugarcane aphid kind of slows down and quits feeding when it gets cooler. And some of the, especially Transform, was not working very well last year because the aphids quit feeding, and it has to be taken up by the aphid for it to work. And by the time they started feeding again, that cool spell went by. The Transform was not in enough quantity in there to help control. So that's something to keep in mind. Looks like right now we're not going to have that issue, at least anytime soon.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, thank you much, Tom. And for more information on the sugarcane aphids, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.